or complaint to at Talkback Eric on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, look, exciting guy to watch. Doug Baldwin nursing a knee injury. The Marshawn Lynch years are over, and since then, they've got a lot of stud young guys that can't stay healthy at running back. The Jimmy Graham experiment was a complete bust. I don't know what in the world went on with that. Then you got, guys like Lockett and Richardson and guys that, Percy Harvin, guys that you don't know what to do with, have cycled through there. I don't know, Justin, if I wouldn't ask you a quick question of how many more years over under does Pete Carroll coach this team? Because I think you're starting to see that this may be a time when the organization needs to take a step back and say, we love what we have with Russell Wilson. We love what we have with Doug Baldwin. But outside of that, our identity has majorly shifted, and it could be a culture problem in the locker room with Pete Carroll. What do you think?
I'm kind of there with you as well. I mean, I struggle with that question of do we put Pete Carroll on the hot seat? But, people forget that Pete Carroll's a guy that's in his late 60s. This is a guy that's been around for a long time in the league. And then, remember from USC and then back and having success in Seattle. He comes across as this young players coach, out in the field, throwing the football, playing loud music and all this kind of stuff that typically you don't see a guy like Bill Belichick doing in some of these coaches that actually are older. So you got to wonder how much Pete Carroll's going to keep wanting to go through this. If this team is now on the backside in the decline, it's not that easy in the NFL to kind of fix your mistakes. And this team on the defensive side, for what they had, they really haven't done a lot to replace him. It'll be interesting with this defense, but that's a good point. Does Seattle kind of get tired of Pete Carroll first, or does Pete Carroll get tired of Seattle first? I think that's what it's going to come down to, where at his age and what he's gone through, he might just say, look, this isn't really worth it. This team's not really going anywhere. It's going to be a struggle. Like you talked about with Doug Baldwin, he's already come out and said he will not be more than 80 or 85% all year. And he's their biggest weapon. He's their most consistent threat. And they just gave Tyler Lockett a lot of money. He's coming off of a significant injury, really hasn't had that type of consistency for this team. He's flashed for them. He's flashed in special teams, and he's done something on the offensive side, but it's never been consistent. Again, they let Jimmy Graham go. They never really utilized him to his full potential, but the times they did, you have to think, bought them a little bit of sort of teams kind of looking at that film and saying, oh, well, at least we better make Jimmy Graham a guy that we're going to look to double team and try to take him away. So at least that opened up other things. They did draft Rashad Penny in the first round, but Eric, I just don't like this roster. And based on where Vegas has them, they don't really like it that much either. They have the numbers set at 8 for a team that went 9-7 last year. So you're going over under Seattle with 8 wins this year.
With Vegas setting the line at 8, I kind of like the push on this one. I can't get myself to 9 or 10 wins. Again, a tough schedule with the divisions that they've got to go against. Even in their own division, you got to figure that games against the Rams are going to be tough. I think they've got a really good chance, obviously, against the Cardinals. But then the 49ers could be a coin flip the couple times they play. Then you've got, you start the season away in Mile High at Denver. I can't just say, oh, they automatically win that one. I mean, Denver's going to give them a good fight. Then the next game's away at Chicago. And then boom, boom, you're Dallas. You're right into your season. Rams in week 5 at Oakland. I mean, so this team, I think, is going to struggle to find 9 wins up and down their schedule. But I don't think they're going to be terrible, and that's because, like I said, I do respect Russell Wilson. I respect his talent, so I like to push on this. I really could be wrong on this one more than maybe any of the other ones we've seen, but I just can't get myself anything different than 8.
I want nothing to do with this number. I don't know how to feel about this because based on it, I want to go under, but just watching Russell Wilson over the years, He finds a way to win games for this team that you think they have no shot to win. And they get up there in Seattle at home and those late afternoon games, and it's raining and it's misty, and he's running around doing that backyard brand of football that we talked about, and he's running 50 and 60 yards behind the line of scrimmage to throw a ball 10 yards, and the receiver runs another 40. I mean, just the craziest stuff happened at the end of those games, and you're like, how in the world did Seattle find a way to win this game? I'm like you. I'd be much closer to the push, but this was a game that this is a team that I would just stay away from with their number because I don't feel comfortable going under. I don't feel comfortable going over. Push makes me feel okay. just because it feels like Russell Wilson can find a way to get to 8, but just based on the roster and the weapons around him, I mean, bringing in Brandon Marshall, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that would have been a huge gain. Last year, he did nothing on a team that was devoid of talent. He couldn't even stay healthy on that team, and he did nothing when Beckham was out and hurt and Shepard was off the field. So I don't feel anything good about this team. I don't like that. I just stay away from that number, Eric. It's probably, of all the teams we've done, the one that I feel least comfortable making a call on, just because there's nothing really that gets me excited on this team outside of Russell Wilson. So the team that Vegas moved ahead of Seattle is the San Francisco 49ers. They made the big splash last year, trading that second-round pick, bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo. They threw him out there towards the end of the year, and like DJ Khaled might say, all he does is win. And that's what he continued to do last year for that team. So now this is kind of the chic pick of the NFL. Everybody seems to be talking up the Niners. Oh, this is the team that's going to make the surprise. They're going to make the run. Seems like Vegas might be buying into this hype a little bit as well. Of course, Vegas likes to play off of what the public is saying because their job is to try to find ways to get all the money on one side and hope it happens on the other. And that's, like we said, how they keep giving you those free drinks when you go out there. But these Niners team, Eric, just was announced this past weekend. Jerick McKinnon, they've lost him for the year with a torn ACL. There's a lot of uncertainty now at this running back position because, remember, Carlos Hyde's not there anymore. He's in Cleveland. They brought in Alfred Morris. Yes, that Alfred Morris. They have Matt Breida as well. They don't have a lot at the tight end position. There seemed to be good chemistry last year with Marquise Goodwin. And then Pierre Garçon got hurt towards the end of the year, but he's a guy that's been around now for quite a while. He's getting a little long in the tooth. So a lot of questions on a team that Vegas has set this high and expects to finish second in this division. So with all that being said, is there enough around Jimmy Garoppolo that he can actually get this Niners team into a position to make a run at a wild card spot in this NFC that we think is going to be pretty darn tough?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to use one of your phrases here for a second, and I'm going to pump the brakes on this one a little bit. And look, I'm not a 49ers fan. I have nothing against them, but I'm not a fan. But I will be watching with interest this team because, well, prior to McKinnon's injury, I thought that was a great pickup for them, and I thought it gave a good backfield to Garoppolo. And like you said, Garçon is getting older. You know, we've got to see Goodwin now step up, Marquise Goodwin out of the wide receiver position. So, you know, the thing I don't know about is that when they were not sure about Carlos Hyde last year, they were giving Matt Breida opportunities, and sometimes he would look good, and sometimes he wouldn't look so good. And so now you go into the season thinking that McKinnon's your guy, and I think he would have been a fantastic pickup for them until this unfortunate ACL tear. But now you're going in with Breida and Morris as your two-headed monster. I think that's a totally different situation than what you were looking at even 4 days ago. And so if you're Garoppolo and you're looking downfield at Goodwin and Garçon, you've got a tight end that I think could be decent, but you know, we've got to see numbers out of him. So for me, if I'm San Francisco, I think I go into this year with tempered expectations, and then more than anything, I make sure that I'm coaching up my offensive line to protect that quarterback, because this is not the all or nothing year for San Francisco. This is a building year. And so everyone can get excited about Vegas having them second in the division and you know, all of the good things and good vibes that are coming out of San Francisco. All of that is good stuff. But pump the brakes a little bit on them making the wild card and doing damage in the playoffs. And no. I just don't think they're there yet, Justin. I'm excited. I'm going to be interested to see what they do. But for me, if I'm a coach, I got to protect that asset in Jimmy Garoppolo, especially with a backfield now that's not as dangerous. So your defense is going to be cheating up until he proves he can hit Garçon and Goodwin and others downfield. But I got to protect that quarterback, and I got to look to my future. So pump the brakes. I think they're probably better than Seattle, and they're definitely better than Arizona. But they've got a tough schedule ahead, and just make sure you get to the next couple of years, because it's not make or break right now.
No, they're definitely ahead of schedule, where I think both the organization and their fan base really thought they would be. When we talked about this team last year, again, it was a lot like Arizona, not a lot to be excited about, and they got gifted Jimmy Garoppolo from whatever's going on in New England that caused that to happen, where you trade someone like that for just a second-round pick, when really the talk of the league was how good this guy has been. So, yeah, they're ahead of schedule. They haven't put a lot around him yet. That would be my big concern for him. And again, we've talked about this NFC. There's a lot of good teams in the NFC when you look up and down their schedule. And even in their own division outside of Arizona, Seattle's still going to play them tough. We haven't even talked about the team that Vegas has to win this division, where we think that they're going to land in the LA Rams. So, yeah, I'm just not buying into all their hype yet. I think Garoppolo will have a good year. But, again, what he did last year, you're towards the end of the year, some of these teams really aren't playing that hard. Jacksonville seemed like they were lost when they played them. They got a Rams team that was resting everybody in the last game of the year. So some of the things that he did, while they were great, and he did a really nice job stepping in and winning games for them, it doesn't automatically make me think that he's going to be able to take that and then they're just going to run into this year and blow through the league and some of these teams that they're playing just based off of his play. He's still going to have players around him, and losing McKinnon and having to sort of try to fix this run game on the fly, I think that's going to be a problem for them, Eric. So Vegas has their number set at 8.5. Again, this is a team that went 6-10 last year. What do you like with San Francisco, over or under 8.5?
Yeah, and this one's a tough one, but I'm going to take the under just barely. And this is, again, not because I don't believe in Garoppolo, not because I don't believe in the 49ers. I think they're definitely on the upward trend, but I can't get them to 9. I like them at 8. So thankfully, I get the half game from Vegas. The only half game push I took all season was Detroit, and that's because they've proven that they can tie football games in the NFL better than anyone else. But San Francisco's going to take the 8. And Justin, here's the thing. As excited as I am about Garoppolo and their prospects, their season starts off really, really tough. They've got to go and play away games in Minnesota, Kansas City, Los Angeles against the Chargers, and in Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers within the first 6 weeks of the season. And if that's not enough, in the 7th game of the season, they get to go home and play the Rams. So, look, there's just not a lot of momentum that they're going to build coming out of the station in this first part of this season. And so I think if they overcome some of those struggles, maybe win a game against Kansas City, maybe steal one against the Chargers, I think they lose to Minnesota and Green Bay and the Rams. But, you know, depending on how they do against Detroit and Arizona at home, that's going to tell me a lot. If they can come through that first stretch at maybe a 5-4 or hopefully maybe even a 6-3, that's going to tell us a lot about them. However, if they come out of there the opposite, 3-5, 4-4, I think that's where me being at 8 feels really comfortable, because it's just going to be tough to get to 9 or 10 wins when you've got the schedule that they've got, the beginning of the season that they've got, and really a lot of the uncertainty that you and I just covered about the team in general. Look, pump the brakes. 8 would be good. I think that's still a good season. It's an improvement on last year. Protect your quarterback, move on to next year, and see what you got.
Yeah, we're in sync on this one. I just don't feel comfortable going over that 8.5 mark with what I've seen out of this NFC, and even what we think we're going to get out of Kansas City and the Chargers that they're going to have to play as well. We don't even know what we're getting out of Denver and Oakland at this point, but they just have a tough schedule. And again, they're trending in the right direction. They're going to be in a lot of these games. I just don't know if it's going to be as easy as people think that the last 5 games that Garoppolo started last year were going to be. So, yeah, give me the under on them. I'm not ready for that just yet, to think that they're going to get to 9 or 10 and challenge for a playoff spot. I think they'll be sort of in that mix of those other teams that are still in contention. But, again, we just talked about the NFC South, and if I'm going to sit there and think that 3 of those teams can get to double-digit wins, that means both wild cards are going to come out of there. I don't necessarily think I see how that's going to happen. And we haven't even talked about what you have with Minnesota and Green Bay. Right now you're at 5. We haven't even talked about Philly. That's 6. And then you get to the Rams at 7. I don't see that there's a lot of room for the Niners where people think they're going to jump over all those teams. So it's going to be a tough road for really a lot of these NFC teams that aren't in those top, because, you know, you start falling and losing a couple games, you're going to put yourself in a big hole right off the bat. So, Eric, let's finish it up with these Los Angeles Rams. They were the talk of LA last year, and really the talk of the league, that they basically kind of came out of nowhere after the Jeff Fisher era ended. They brought in Sean McVay, and they found a way to get to 11 wins, got a home playoff game that they lost to Atlanta. But, boy, this team, they went into the offseason with vengeance on their mind, it seemed like, because they went out, they got Marcus Peters, They traded for Aqib Talib. They signed Ndamukong Suh.